Good evening and welcome to our Title IV Social Emotional Learning Parent Night. It's our pleasure to have Sarah Stevenson from Mindful Educational Services with us tonight. First, I'd like to begin by welcoming our panelists. First, we have our Director of Curriculum, Diane Pedroza. We have Michelle Nickel, the Elementary Supervisor, Language Arts and all subjects. We have Maureen Moore, our Math and Science Supervisor for 6 through 12. Nikki Mazer is our Ridgeway School Principal. Carrie Young is our Ridgeway School Vice Principal. Nancy Driver is the Middle School Principal. Stephen Navaji is our Middle School Vice Principal. Mrs. Waldron is our MTES Principal. Mrs. Moore is our MTES Vice Principal. And I think and Mr. George is on. He's our Director of Student Services, Staff and Student Services. And I'm Linda Saracino, the Supervisor for Language Arts and Social Studies. So Sarah Stevenson has been working with our district over the past 2 years, working with our students and staff, teaching them mindful educational practices. We hope you find tonight's Parent Night informative and helpful. Without further ado, Sarah Stevenson will present her presentation to us. Good evening, Sarah.
Thank you, Linda, so much. As always, I am happy to be here. I hold Manchester School District in high respect for the work that they have put into their staff and their students, and the understanding that mindful practices are desperately needed pre-COVID and during COVID. The purpose of this presentation is to bring you guys into light of what our students, what our children, what your children are feeling on an emotional level. I think as adults, we have felt the impact of this past year in our own ways. Kids have a different way of expressing that sometimes. So we'll be talking about those big and even those little emotions. We'll be talking about what to recognize. And I'll give you guys a lot of different strategies in terms of working with your child. I'll go into the brain science behind why they are feeling particular ways. And so that in working with the kids before COVID in person, I speak to them in a very real way about their ability to control their thoughts and their ability to respond versus react to situations. So I also want to just take a moment aside from this and just thank you for watching. I commend you as a parent for taking this time. I know that time is limited for us all, but there's no greater gift you can give your child than to just continuing to gain insight into supporting them, the whole being, not just the academic. That's important. Grades are important, but this presentation is to just kind of hold space for their emotional well-being and also hold space for yours. So so here we are supporting you through awareness and self-reflection. These are tools that are going to help aid your child through these trying times. So I always like to start my presentations with a quote, and I think quotes can be powerful. We see them all over the place, here and there, but this one just stuck out to me and I wanted to use it tonight. And I think it really needs to be felt by each of you as parents, to just continue to be gentle with yourself. I think it's really easy to ask yourself, why did this happen and this didn't go right? And should I be doing this? I mean, I think as parents, we constantly question ourselves. And when we question ourselves, what that says to me is we're thinking about our children and we're on the right path. So question yourselves, yes, but also be gentle with yourselves. You're doing the best you can. We've been up against a lot this past year. And the bottom line is to certainly love yourself and pour love into yourself through time and self-reflection and things that bring you joy, right? Because if you feel self-love and joy, your children will respond to that. And you can share the same with them. So I want to start today, and I do this with the virtual assemblies with the kids in some format, with something called grounding. I use the word grounding versus meditation because I feel like when I use the word meditation, they kind of associate their own idea to meditation. They like to cross their legs and sit like this, and that's fine, they're still, but I want to make the word grounding real to them and I explain to them that grounding is a way to feel secure. The word ground is something we stand on. It supports us. It makes us feel safe. I say to the kids, if you step on water, you sink down. That's not safe, but you have the ground to hold you. The idea of grounding is to take your brain, which is kind of out here, right? Up until this moment that you're watching this presentation, you've done a bunch of things throughout your day. Even as you're listening to me, there's thoughts kind of moving along the back of your brain, thinking about some other things. What grounding does is it takes those thoughts and kind of puts them in a little box and brings you to a place of quiet. And there's 5 steps associated with this. So I want to talk you guys through quickly what each step represents, and then you will have a chance to experience this. I think that most kids really enjoy this. And at first, when I first present it to a student who isn't too sure about it, it's a little different. But you see over time that they really do resonate with it. And if we can teach them this practice when they're young, what a gift they will have as they grow, to know that they have the control and the power to quiet their minds and to be still and to be thoughtful, because that's where they'll recognize their emotions. So the first step is stillness. I'll bring you guys into a place of stillness. And the best thing I can suggest you do is simply listen to the sound of my voice. That's all meditation is. If you are listening, then you're applying. Just listen. Eyes are closed. If your child isn't comfortable with eyes closed, bring chin down and keep the eyes open on the lap, just to kind of put the blinders on. The next word is detachment. And if I were to use a child speak, I would say, let go of negative thoughts for teenagers or tweens. For the younger children, I'd say, let go of thoughts that don't make you feel good inside. So in that moment, they recognize if a thought comes in that they don't like, to just kind of let it float by, and you'll experience this as we work through it. The next section is a reflection. And they finish the sentence, how do I feel right now? With the first word that comes into their mind. Why do I do that? I do that so that they begin to name their feelings. We talk about feelings all the time, definitely not enough. But the goal that I personally bring into what I do with my work is to really get kids to talk about their feelings like they talk about what they've had for breakfast. I mean, the more that they talk, the more that they share, the more that they connect with themselves, the more they're getting out and they're not going to other sources. A self-assessment, it's basically on a scale of 1 to 10. How are you feeling? 10 being the happiest of days, 1 being I'm just not good. Taking a moment to take a little barometer. It's the number doesn't matter so much. They don't have to tell anyone. It's just a way for them to pause and to ask themselves that question. And then at the end, there's a self-realization component, which seems to work. It's harder for the younger kids. It works a little bit better with the older kids. But it's the moment where I ask them, what have you learned? What do you feel from these 3 minutes of quiet? And you know, some kids produce really amazing answers. They've solved a problem. They've thought about something they can do as an alternative. So bringing kids into a place of stillness, even ourselves as adults, is really important. And the first time you do it, I will tell you, it is a little uncomfortable. You're kind of like thinking, this is different. I haven't really done this before, but just trust the process. Listen to the sound of my voice, and it will take no more than just 3 minutes. So I'm going to invite you guys just to close your eyes and just to sit comfortably. Just kind of relax your body, relax your cheeks, and release the tongue from the roof of your mouth. And begin to just notice the seat that you are sitting on. Notice how it feels to be supported. And in this space, just allow the word stillness to come over you. Stillness, just being here now. You don't need to be anywhere else. No one needs you. There's nothing to do. It's a still place to be. Maybe begin to bring awareness to your breathing. You don't have to inform it in any way, but just feel the breath, maybe even hear the breath. And then notice if there's any external noise, any sounds that you might be hearing around you. And as you're in this place of stillness, our mind often wants to get in the way. So if you feel a thought come in that is unrelated to what you're doing, just let the thought float on by and revisit it later. If you feel a negative thought come in, something that doesn't feel right, often the negative ones are the ones we attach to. So I want you to imagine like two pieces of Velcro, just detach from that thought and put it up in a box and then close the lid. And now simply finish this sentence for me with the first word that comes to you, whether it's positive, neutral, or negative. In this moment, right now, I feel. And don't change the answer, just allow that word to come. And to follow that feeling, let's talk about how you feel on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being feeling happy and carefree and joy and no pressures or stressors right now, to 1 being almost not knowing how to feel because you're feeling really low and really down. So just take a moment to just assess that scale. Pick a number. You don't have to share it with anyone. It's just for you to know, only you. And lastly, what have you maybe discovered in these few minutes? What have you discovered about yourself? And if you don't have an answer, that's fine too. But sometimes we get an idea that comes to us when we're quiet because we're usually too busy not being quiet. And then from here, guys, just take a deep breath in and out. Okay. So that is grounding. And, if you're taking notes and you want to write those references down, you can use this for yourself. And I do it daily. If I'm driving the car, obviously not closing my eyes, but I kind of go through this little checklist. And when you're doing this with children, you can boil this down to lay down, sit down, close your eyes, feel the stillness. It's a very simple script. And then talk to them after. And I think you will be surprised at what you hear because our minds are busy, their minds are busy. And when we quiet it down, the real stuff comes out. So let's get into what these kids are up against. What are they craving right now? As we know, they're craving life to be normal, and it's hard to remember what life was normally like. And the reality is that a lot of the communication, especially for the older kids, is happening through a screen more than it ever has been. Is there a way to emotionally connect with other people over a screen beyond emojis? Not really. So communication amongst our youth is at a very difficult place right now. And really what they're craving is just connection, normal soccer practice, ballet class connection. It's just kind of been taken from them. And we're going to get into social development. And this is a huge part of their development. And I think we have to be reminded that they're in the middle of a really important part of their developmental stage and something's kind of gotten in the way. So we're going to explore a little bit about what to do with that. They crave relationships, good, strong relationships. A lot of our families have been together an awful lot within the same walls this past year. Things aren't always easy in a home when there's a lot of people. There's, disagreements and sibling stuff going on. And relationships have been strained in different ways among even their friend groups. Everything is shifting. So in this place, I guess my call to you is to continue being that constant in their life and connect with them because something I learned, I have 5 children. My oldest is 17, but I learned, and this was not me coming up with this. Someone told me this when he was a baby. If you talk to them when they're little, a lot about their little problems, they'll talk to you when they're older. And I can tell you that is truth. So parents of the littles, just keep talking to them, whatever they're talking about, Paw Patrol or whatever it is, because you're really going to want them to talk to you when they're 15 and 16. They crave school to be normal, right? And school is just different now. And the thing with school and with life in general is that the routine is different. The routine is hardly a routine because what's going to happen 2 weeks from now? And what's going to happen in the fall? And my message to the kids is always to just kind of stay with today. Just kind of be here right now. You can only do what you can do right now. And that's a message that we have to keep giving to them. They crave the curricular activities. They crave not wearing those masks. It's very frustrating to them. How do some of them react to this? They act out. There's behavior issues. And when you see behavior issue, one thing you have to do is recognize the behavior, of course, and deal with that, but then be curious about the why, what brought the behavior up. A lot of kids are alone. They don't have that same joy that they had. So just really taking a hard look at what's missing. So here's another quote that I like. While physical and cognitive developmental milestones might be easier to observe, the development of certain social and emotional skills are crucial, especially in school-age children, age 5 to 12. I'm always very sad when I hear my younger children kind of moving away from pretend play. I loved listening to them pretend play with their little animals and their stuffed animals, because that's how they develop socially. They pretend and they talk, and that's how they learn social cues with their peers. A lot of that has been disrupted this past year. So we need to be tenderhearted towards what's going on in their world and understand moving forward that as safely as we can, giving them opportunities to continue to explore play and relationships with other kids their age. I love Mr. Rogers. I watched him. I was a weekly fan when I was little. It gives children a chance to practice what they are learning. Play gives children a chance to practice what they're learning. I mean, that's just brilliant. It's brilliant. I mean, it's when you stop, if you go to a park and you just stop and you watch someone else's child play, don't stare at them for too long. That might be weird, but watch them play, watch how they interact, and notice what's going on there and how they're learning. So the reason I bring this up is, once again, because so much has shifted this past year and that's been taken from them. And that could be the reason that we're also dealing with some behaviors that might be frustrating to us at times. Then we jump to the teenage years. Oh boy, they're filled with physical, emotional, and cognitive changes. I mean, think about that. Physical, they're changing physically, hormonally, emotionally, it's all over the board. Those two things go together pretty well. And cognitively, their brains are growing, they're learning, they're reapplying. It is therefore not surprising that teens have been more susceptible to declines in psychological health over the last year. So right here is kind of the meat at what I want to bring to you today, is that we have to take a good, careful look through a microscope and look at our own children in terms of their own psychological health. Grades are important in my home. They always have been. But what holds the grades and the standards of my children going to school rests in how they are emotionally. If that is off, if there's stuff there, everything else is going to crumble. It's like the emotional well-being of children is the foundation to a home. There can't be too many cracks in there, right? So we want to really take a hard look at that. And that's what this presentation is about. So let's look at this. It's Erickson's stages of psychosocial development. I love this chart. I know it's a little wordy, but I love it because it's straightforward and it's simple. If we were to boil down the developmental expressions of each age group succinctly, this is what it is. So of course, you look through the infancy, toddler, preschool, but look at elementary school. Children learn the pleasure of applying themselves to tasks, or they feel inferior. They're just trying to figure out who they are amongst other people, right? And that's been different this past year. It's competence versus inferiority. Adolescence, now we're moving into identity and versus role confusion. Teenagers work at refining a sense of self by testing roles and then integrating them to form a single identity, or they become confused about who they are. So teenagers are tricky. I mean, that can be a whole other presentation, but they're testing roles. They're trying to figure out, where do I fit in this world? If I try this, is that me? If I join this friend group, is that where I fit? Well, they don't want me. They're constantly kind of dipping their toe in the water of identity. That's what it's about for them. And the reason that we need to be there for them is because they need people to talk to, because they don't know how to talk about emotion very well. You can't just keep dabbling in different things to figure out who you are. You have to talk about it. And I try to present that in my virtual assemblies. What are you into? What are your loves? What are your gifts? And so that we can start creating this whole person, right? So that's the nuts and bolts of where these kids are at developmentally, how they should be developing. And as you look at this past year and everything they've been up against even more, because it's worked against how they should be normally developing, you know. So quickly looking at this chart, I like statistics and charts that are just kind of right there and very simple to read. So we have two age groups. We have age 5 to 10 in boys and girls, and we have ages 11 to 16 in boys and girls. It's the percentage of children with probable mental health problems by age group. This was done in England, and this is, the blue is 2017, the red is 2020. I think that it's very interesting to look at the youngers first. Okay, so in 2020, we see the red there, that the boys had a much harder time, that age group. I have two boys, and I think that boys really depend on routine. I don't know. I've always kind of felt like girls just kind of get it, like they can kind of roll with it a little bit. But I've always felt, and this is just me, that boys really demand that structure. And so I'm wondering if that's why they had a harder time, because this past year was so kind of day by day at times. Now we switch to the older grade, and look what we see. By a whole 5% increase, the teen girls are the ones struggling more. Well, that would make sense. Teen girls are much more social. How are they socially relating to one another? They're socially relating through an array of ways to communicate. You can't communicate effectively on Instagram and Snapchat and text. Somebody's going to get hurt, ill-intentioned or not. And I think that being kind of cooped up and life-changing this past year, they've depended on that way too much. And it's affected their overall well-being. I've seen it in my home several different times. So being sensitive to that, like, you know, as simple as, you know, that phrase, step into someone else's shoes, what are they feeling? If you were to step into your child's shoes, and not to make it doom and gloom, but what are they feeling right now? What is school like wearing a mask? What are their fears? You know, so just try to be curious about your children, study them as you do, especially as we're working through these days. The teen facts. I like to give all the facts first. I feel like we need to get the facts and understand the data before we move on to the how to apply practices. 1 in 3 adolescents will meet the criteria for an anxiety disorder by the age of 18. This is not to scare you, but this is to bring your awareness fully into the understanding that anxiety is an actual mental health disorder. It's in the DSM-4 book for psychological, you know, disorders. So anxiety presents itself in an array of fashions. I have a slide that we'll talk about with that. 46% of parents say their teen had shown signs of a new or worsening mental health condition since the beginning of the pandemic. I mean, that's half of the parents. And I'm sure if you are watching this, there's a reason you're watching this. And I also, once again, want to say thank you for being here and taking in this knowledge. A poll looked at the response based on 977 parents of teenagers between 13 and 18 years old. The results suggest that 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 5 boys have experienced new or worsening anxiety. Again, not to paint a dark picture, but I think it's time collectively as kind of a society, as parents, as teachers, as administrators, that we understand that these facts are real and what can we do about it. Right? The emotional health of a child, of ourselves, defines how we function in society, how we do at our jobs, how we engage with the people we love the most. So to me, mental health is key. It's all of that. Parents report 56% of teens are using social media. We know that. I honestly thought it would be more than that. 43% online gaming, 64% texting. 9% of teens have been meeting with friends indoors, and then 6% of teens have been meeting with friends outdoors. So looking at those numbers, 9% and 6%, that's so sad. You know, prior to all this, there was so much of that going on. I remember a year and a half ago, my basement was full of giggling 12-year-olds and disco lights and chips and, you know, fun and normalcy. It doesn't happen now. And the one thing that we can really do every day is to just check in with them multiple times. The teenagers are going to get annoyed. They're going to roll their eyes. They're not going to talk to you, but they're going to remember that you checked in. That's all that matters. And then one of those days, they're going to share something with you. So just keep pressing on, keep loving on them is what I can say. So I want to share a video with you. It's about 3 minutes long. This video I really like because it gives you an inside perspective of what these kids are thinking, what's kind of moving through their brains, and it leads you right into a very simple meditation at the end, which is similar to the stuff that I do with the students in schools. It's the dynamic is different, but you'll get the idea here. So I'm going to pull this up for you. Hopefully it all works.
Middle school can be really hard sometimes. One of my biggest stresses is the homework at school. Sometimes you get piles and piles and piles. You get projects and more projects plus homework. Like, I need to get it done.
I'll be doing my homework and then the phone rings.
You want to answer it, you want to look at it, but at the same time, you don't.
There's so many things you can do on the phone.
I use social media, Twitter, Instagram. I text my friends, I watch YouTube, etc. There've been stupid arguments over text messages sometimes. I'm not sure what they're gonna say, how they're gonna say it. What should I say back to them? When I hit send, my fingers all trembling because I'm like, is this the right thing to say? Should I say something else? Should I just send it? No. Send it? No. Press send. It's done. Now I gotta wait for the response.
As a 7th grade girl, the popular kids might say, you should do your hair like this, you should wear this kind of makeup, you should do just things like that to get girls to be like worried about what people think.
And it's a lot of pressure to not be wearing makeup, so you never know if you're like as pretty as the people who are wearing makeup.
My friends were getting bullied a lot because of the 8th graders and the 7th graders think that they're the best.
Sometimes people aren't nice to you, and that's how it is in the real world, but it gets to be a lot. It just makes me upset.
I think people are afraid people are gonna be talking about them. Like if you feel embarrassed or if you made a mistake or something, then I just feel very trapped.
It feels awful, so I try to do everything perfect.
My schedule is tense, busy, and really tiring because I actually cram a lot of things into one day.
I have due dates, I have school, I have activities with band. It clutters in my mind, and I think, how am I going to deal with this?
I kind of just start to shut down.
Well, my stomach always feels like very in knots.
I think my brain's on overdrive. There's a bunch of papers just flying through my brain, and there's people running around, and there's a fire in there. I get a lot of anxiety when I have a lot of pressure put on me.
Pressure.
Expectation.
It's a lot to take in when you know it's on you.
You can begin by closing your eyes, getting in a posture where your back is straight, steady like a mountain, but your muscles are soft and relaxed. And then go ahead and bring your hand up to your chest, placing it over your heart or on your chest, wherever it feels comfortable. And then just feel your body breathe, just noticing as you inhale the rising of your chest, as you exhale the falling of your chest. And just staying with this gentle rhythm of your breathing. And you might have some thoughts that come in, that you become distracted. That's okay. That's the nature of the mind. We just gently redirect our attention and come back to feel
Okay,
on our
guys.
stomach.
So I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I just wanted you to understand or just see the shift that takes place in oh, hold on, I'm sorry about that. see the shift that takes place from moving from the way that their brains are thinking and what they're going through to that immediate sense of calm and peace that is kind of brought over them with the breathing. And we practice that with the grounding. It's the same experience of just being still, going within and noticing what's happening in our bodies and getting them out of their heads where they're busy and there's things that they don't understand. And it's at the end of those meditations that they leave with a feeling of just things, the problems are still going to be there. They're not going to go away, but those issues are going to kind of be subdued a little bit and they can think a little bit more clearly, because we do two things when we're overwhelmed and stressed. We either A, respond, which is take a deep breath, speak clearly, use your words carefully, or we react. And what's been happening with a lot of our kids today is they're reacting through, and my two kindergartners and early in the pandemic were definitely regressing socially. I saw that was a reaction. My teenagers were being more verbally reactive. So teaching kids how to respond versus react. So the two big things that video talks about is stress versus anxiety. They're actually two very different things, but they present themselves in similar ways. So stress you think of is caused by an external trigger, right? Short term, a work deadline, a fight with a loved one. Long term, such as being unable to work, chronic illness. People have been under so much stress this past year. I mean, if I gave you a piece of paper and gave you 1 minute to write down your stressors, you'd probably have it all full. It's just where we're at. Anxiety is more persistent worry. That's not just an external trigger. It's more worrying about something that's going to happen. I think the anxiety piece is really what's happening among our youth today more than the stress piece. The anxiety piece is, what is school going to look like in the fall? Am I going to be able to go on this family vacation in July? We have one that's up in the air. I don't know if we can go on. So the anxiety is the one that's really the big one. It's a hard one because they don't have the answers for that. So if they're anxious to begin with, and they're presented with this anxious thought, it's just going to keep looping in their minds. And the reason we practice breath control and self-awareness and how are you feeling right now is to keep a constant check-in on where that's at. So both of these things, stress and anxiety, are going to present themselves in ways such as tiredness, irritability. For stress, it's muscle pain. If you start to feel achy in your neck or your back, difficulty concentrating. Just continue to study your child and continue to notice patterns and behaviors that are unusual. And it's once you start noticing them, they're pretty easy to pick up. So even if they seem subtle, just kind of be aware of what's going on there. So in talking about stress and anxiety, the biggest thing that we can do to help our children is breathe. And the kids know, because they've been working with me for a couple of years now, that the power of our breath is like a magic superpower that helps our brains. So I had a video I was going to share with you. I'm not going to pull it up because I'm actually going to talk it through to you. But if you are interested in watching that, it's a 2-minute YouTube video. It's down here on the bottom. Dr. Dan Siegel, hand model of the brain. You can pull it up and he'll walk you right through it. But I'm going to share it with you. And I'm going to share it with you in the way that I speak to kids in assemblies, as little as 6 years old and as old as 18. I think this is brilliant. This is something that I learned in my training years ago, and I'll forever love it. So if you take your hand like this, we're going to make the model of the brain. And this relates to how I kind of buy the kids into letting them know that they have the power over their emotions. So the thumb goes in the middle, and this represents the amygdala. So the amygdala is the part of the body, part of the brain that feels emotion, that gets excited, that gets scared, that gets worried. It's the feeling part. When we're threatened by something, we fight, flight, or freeze. This is the part of the brain that responds to that. Okay. The front of the brain, so you can take your fingers and put it over the amygdala, is the prefrontal cortex. So if you hold your hand like this, that's like the brain. The prefrontal cortex is what you're using right now. You're taking in the information, you're learning, you're listening. And as you take in the information, it travels to the back of your brain called the hippocampus, and that's where stored memory is. That's where you remember, memories from when you were a kid. It's where you have memories and things that are related to smell and taste and all of that stuff. So if this is the hand model of the brain, when the body gets upset or feels fear or feel anxiety, the middle part of the brain, I say to the kids, starts to kind of wiggle and get really upset. And when that amygdala starts to get upset, the brain flips its lid. When the brain flips its lid, there's no learning taking place because it's not on track. You can't successfully learn. You can't successfully reason with your child if they're up here and you're right here. So this is responding, talking. This is reacting when they have a meltdown. But the beautiful part about this, guys, is that we can get the brain back on track and it only takes your breath. So now I'm going to take you to the rest of the display here. Imagine that my forearm is my spine. Up the spine is something called a vagus nerve. Its one job is to send signals up to the brain related to feeling. My elbow is my belly. Now, scared, nervous, anxious, worried, something happens. I flip my lid. I get really upset. When that happens, and when you breathe into the belly, balloon breaths, I teach the kids balloon breaths, 3 of them, the signal will go up that vagus nerve, and eventually the brain will get back on track slowly. The key is that kids breathe into their belly so that when you fill your belly with air, the belly pushes out like a balloon. There's a reason that when people are on flights, on airplanes, and they get nervous, they're given a paper bag. If you breathe in and out of a paper bag, your belly gets really big. The reason that's done is because when you breathe that way, it ignites the parasympathetic nervous system, the calming nervous system, to get your brain back on track. So if you forget anything I share with you in this whole hour, what I want you to remember is to sit down with your child and encourage them to breathe. With the younger children, I have them lay on their back, and I tell them this all the time in our virtual assemblies, to lay on your back, put a stuffy on your belly, like a stuffed animal. And when you breathe in, watch your stuffy go up. When you breathe out, watch your stuffy go down. And if we can really hit home with them about the breath, if we can get them to practice breathing, intuitively, the body's just going to do it for the rest of their lives. Why do I know this? Because I've been practicing yoga for 17 years. And when I feel a stressor coming on and the kids know, I take that big breath, it's my body's intuitive response to get back on track. All right, so check out that video. It's really cool stuff. So breathe with your kids, 3 breaths helps get things back on track. What are the signs of stress in children? Backwards progress in skills and developmental milestones, more difficult to console, right? So the more difficult to reason with, falling asleep and waking up more during the night. Again, if you see a pattern in that, be curious about, this is unusual. Why is this happening? Well, what's going on at school? I wonder, what's the change? Talk to them. Separation anxiety, more clingy, withdrawn, hesitant, disinterest in play dates. That's a big one. All right, so notice that. Hitting, frustration, intense tantrums, even aggressive play. So again, the behaviors that our teens, the behaviors that our children lay out to us is the language that they don't have to express what they're going through. The behavior is a reaction to the internal struggle that's going on. Teens, we look at teens. Feelings of worthlessness or hopelessness. Just you see it. You can see it in your child if they're having a bad day. Shoulders are down, they're quiet. Loss of interest in things he or she used to enjoy. I have one of those in my house. It's been a very difficult year, just not interested in things. It's just, she needs people like she needs water, and she hasn't had that. Withdrawal from friends and family, not wanting to go out or do things, crying. I think if out of all of these, as hard as it is to see your child cry, definitely allow it. They need to be able to feel. And I think it's very brave, especially to teach our boys and to teach our young men that crying is a good thing. It's good to feel. It's good to get that out. The inability to sleep or sleeping too much, loss of appetite, increase in appetite. On the second column over there, be aware that obviously, as you know, the drugs and alcohol are out there. This past year has been pretty boring for them. So what do? They come up with their own fun, and often it does involve this. So have those conversations, be aware of that. Any thoughts about death or suicide or talking about it? I hate bringing this up, but I'm in the field of mental health, and we need to listen to every word. We need to be in communication with other parents if we hear something. We are a team. raising our own children, but also being aware of others. I put down there on the bottom right the hotlines you can call. There's even a talk to text, text the word talk to that number for help and support. Loss of interest in schoolwork is a big one. And even like I mentioned earlier, a little interest in even video chatting. So bunch of different signs to look for. In some ways, I think it's harder to see the signs in the younger children because they're kids. And so you're thinking, oh, this is just a bad day for him or her. But really be curious about those subtle signs in the younger kids. So let me just, sorry guys, got to move something. So here we are, a stress and anxiety reflection guidelines for your teens. So this is basically a script, all right, to sit down with your teen, because it's hard with teenagers to get them to talk, but to sit down with them if you know they are going through something. So let's think about this. So I'll use my own example. A few weeks ago, my daughter thought she was going to go roller skating with a group of friends. Well, the time came and nobody really reached out. And then she found out that they all went. She's really upset about it. And I didn't blame her. So the first step is, obviously, why are you stressed? Why are you upset? Well, I wasn't invited to roller skating when I thought I was. Next, encourage your child to identify the thoughts connected to this situation or event. Well, why do you think they didn't include you? Or do you think you missed a text, or was there something off? And get them talking about the steps leading up to it. Have them not just think about the thing that happened, but what led up to it. Gently help your child to think differently about the situation. All right, so this happened. Let's not hold it against that friend group. Let's kind of move on and see if we can figure this out and repair it a little bit. And maybe we can talk about how you talk to that friend tomorrow when you see her in school, even though you're really upset with her. Encourage your child to suggest some other explanations for the situation. So you see what's happening here is you're not the one telling them how to feel, what to think, what should have happened. You are posing questions for them to go inside to internally reflect and respond to you based on their feelings. That was a lot of words. Basically, you're helping to guide them, their self-discovering. Help your child notice that when he challenges his thinking, his feelings can also change, usually for the better. What we don't want is for kids to get stuck in a feeling. When they get stuck in a feeling, and when it's a bad feeling and it doesn't come out, it just grows, and then the symptoms of depression, stress, and anxiety present themselves, the ones that we just talked about. So this is a really great guideline. I mean, look at it, memorize pieces of it. Again, talk to them when they're little, and they'll talk to you when they're older. I mean, you can use this for the younger ones and just kind of make the language a lot simpler. For the first step, why are you feeling sad? Where in your body do you feel sad? Do you feel like you want to cry? Do you feel it in your belly? And just kind of bring it down to simpler terms. So let's talk about the practices, okay? The practices to help support your child. This is the part where I smile and get excited, because there are things we can do, and that's why you're here. And it is your job as a parent to do this, okay? So the number one thing you can do is breathe. Breathe with your child. Make it a daily, fun little exercise. Okay, if you're talking to your teen, say, breath really helps me when I feel overwhelmed. Just take a few deep breaths, and they may mumble and whatever, but just keep presenting it to them. So for the younger kids, when I go into the schools, I bring this ball, this Hoberman sphere. It starts with an H, Hoberman. You can get them on Amazon. I think Five Below has them. But with the younger children, I have them watch this, and this is very big. I'm not going to open the whole thing, but when they watch it, they breathe with the opening. So they're breathing in and they're breathing out. And what's cool about this is you can kind of teach them how to manipulate their breath. So watch this very carefully. What are they doing? Mindfulness, one thing, one focus, training the brain. Let's breathe in quick, breathe out slow. So it's a great tool for younger kids. At any point, if you have your child or your teen is kind of spiraling and getting upset, the first word you go to is breathe. Look at my eyes. Breathe. Breathe with them. A child will mimic your breath if you breathe with them. You can't just tell them to breathe and expect them to breathe. You put your hands on their shoulders, eye to eye, and breathe. And it's really beautiful to watch. It's like magic. Practice the grounding that we did earlier this evening. You can certainly come up with your own script for that. It doesn't have to sound anything like mine. It can be as simple as, let's go sit on your bed and just relax a little bit and just see how quiet we can get and let our bodies just kind of reflect a little bit. So, you're the best one to do this with your child because you know them the best, but make these practices part of your culture in your home. All right. It might feel different at first, but the brain after a while will begin to crave it because the brain needs it. Just like our physical body needs healthy foods and our bones and our muscles needs exercise, our brain needs nourishment of this kind. For the younger children, this is good. Counting a specific type of object in the room. So you could say to your child, all right, let's just pause and slow down, take a breath. You do that. I want you to count slowly every red thing you see in this room, or blue thing, whatever. Well, what are you doing? It sounds like a silly thing. It's really not, because what they're doing in that moment is focusing on one thing, just counting the blue things or the red things in the room. And it's getting their brain from here to here. And if we can get their brains from here to here somewhat quickly, then we can have a reasonable conversation versus a reactive conversation. Running hands under cold water and focusing on the resulting sensations. This is another one that sounds a little funny, but it works. I have a 6-year-old little boy at home who now does this on his own, or he puts water on his face. There's something about the hands and the nerve endings in the hand that calms the body when, you know how it feels. If you're feeling kind of grimy and you wash your hands under cold water, you feel refreshed. So this is another easy reset button for children. Get them outside. Outside is huge, not just to go outside and get off the screens. We want that, of course, but the sun. We often forget about the benefits of mental health from the sun. Vitamin D. The reason we open our windows when it's nice out, the reason we want to be outside and mow our lawns when it's nice out, is because the sun is calling us. The body craves sun, and the body craves vitamin D. So that is a mood enhancer. Laugh with them. I am the first to tell you, being a mindfulness teacher, educator, and having a large family, I don't laugh enough because there's always so much to do. And I honestly, I'll look at myself in the mirror and think, you don't even look happy right now. Just think of something that makes you laugh. Laugh with them, their little jokes, and it makes everything lighter. Dance with them. And this is something I do in my home. Put on the Alexa. There's something so healing about music. And there's a whole array of children who just connect so deeply with that. At the end of your day, for you, and as a sign to the kids that the day is closing, lights down low. Light a couple candles. There's something significant about candles and lights low that brings a very comforting effect. It's kind of a wind down from the day. And if you can, instill a no screen after 7 rule. It's hard to do, but try it. They'll fall to sleep much easier if they can kind of follow that guideline. And certainly encourage an earlier bedtime if that's an option. And especially for the younger children, provide opportunities for creativity. Okay, they're losing creativity because they're not playing as much. They're not on normal school hours. They're on screens more. What can be creative? I don't know. Go to the beach, get shells and paint them. Give them this, they'll surprise you. We don't realize how creative kids want to be because we're not kids, but they are so creative and they so crave that. Family practices in your home. Connect with them. We talked about that. Don't allow them to isolate. Teenagers will do this. They will just retreat to their rooms with their phones and their TikToks and everything. Check in daily. Just keep going in, pull them out, just keep trying. Encourage them with positive language. I'm a huge proponent of affirmation. Speak truth to your child. Wow, you did a really good job at that. It's hard. It's really hard, I think, especially as parents, when we have a lot going on and our kids are giving us a hard time, to try to find something positive to say, but keep practicing that. They crave that. They really do, more than anything. Provide healthy social experiences. Healthy ones where they're safe and they're around other children outside. Manage your own anxiety and stress as much as you can. You are the barometer of the family, parents. Where your temperature runs is where their temperature runs. If you are not okay, they are going to have a less chance of feeling emotionally okay. What can you say no to? somebody else can always do something that you're volunteering for. If you're volunteering for 3 different things, give 2 of them up because someone else will do them. But start kind of looking at your own life and seeing, what can I take off my plate to better support the emotional needs of my family? Make plans. Having plans is a great way to keep routine in the home. Don't just, go day by day, plan out the day. Continue to check in with your child. We talked about that. Ask them to talk about how they are feeling. Sometimes they're sneaky. They kind of they kind of test the waters a little bit, because especially teenagers, they want to talk, but they want to be cool. And you'll see that they're kind of like putting little feelers out there to see if you'll connect. So just ask. And even if they don't respond, if you ask every day, 2 weeks in, 3 weeks in, I promise you they will respond, because you've been consistent in showing you care. Accept and ask for help. I rely on my mom a lot. She lives 4 hours away, but I still call her a lot. What do I do? Be calm and proactive. All right. Be calm, but be proactive. Calm is nice and even. Proactive is getting things done. If you are having an issue with your child, you have sources. You have great school guidance counselors to a phone call away. Be proactive and make it happen. The mental health of our children is the most important these days. Let your child feel their emotions. I referenced this a few minutes ago with allowing boys to feel. Let them feel. Let them cry. Let them work through whatever it is they're working through. Ask them to name their feelings. Have them write them down. Okay. I wish I was given this kind of information when I was a child. I was always one who would just retreat and want to be alone. And here I am talking about it now as an adult, making up for lost time. But, let them feel it. Let them talk about it. And check in with what they're hearing. What kind of stuff is coming into their ears? What kind of news channels are on at home? What things are they looking at where they're hearing things? Because kids can hear something that we hear and they can take it a completely different way, because cognitively they aren't where we are. So we have to stay on top of that. All right, so I'm going to end with this. Despite the challenges we're all facing now due to COVID, we can still find purpose in our lives and support one another. When faced with a difficult situation, focus on what you can change, accept matters that are beyond your control, and always strive to live by your values. And with that, I would just like to continue to encourage you guys to take it day by day, sometimes moment by moment, and understand that you have these children for 18 years. And the most important thing you can pour into them is your awareness that they matter, because that's something they're going to take with them for the rest of their lives. So I really, really appreciate you taking the time to watch this presentation. It was a joy of mine to put it together. You can find my website at mindfuleducationalservices.com. I get back to emails very quickly. This is a passion of mine, and I would love to help you out if you need anything. Thank you.
Sarah, thank you very much. Before Mrs. Saraceno actually does a closing, I do just want to remind everybody to please sign in and also to provide some feedback. But I also allowed the opportunity for the participants to speak if they wanted to, or ask questions. They can either use the chat, or they could unmute themselves and ask questions if they'd like to. I just wanted to say that I will tell you that what always resonates with me is the importance of the breathing. I feel that what we're going through, it is really important to kind of get in that moment, focus, and then really be able to use that breathing to kind of reset. And it's been very, very helpful technique for myself personally. The other thing is that I love that slide that you talk about all the things that you should be doing with your children and ways to support.
He recognized as a little girl that he was very different in the way he perceived experiences around and then chose to behave.
Wasn't me. But I will also tell you that I've been doing a lot of reading, and my thing is always to let people know how grateful we are for them and for what they're doing, and to always let people know that, sometimes people feel like they're not doing enough, I think especially in these times, but to let them know that even the small little things that you're seeing are making a difference. And I think that that's healthy for both, the person expressing the gratitude and the one receiving it. So I just really want to thank you very much, because I thought you did a tremendous job. I think it's not easy bringing all of this together, but I think a lot of what you've done for us this year has been very helpful and very much needed. So thank you so much.
You're welcome, guys. My pleasure. Thank you.
Maureen, do you have any questions or anything? I know that we have some attendees there. I didn't know if they had anything that they needed to ask or wanted to say. Maureen Romanowski actually works with our students at Regional Day School. And so I'm glad she can join us today, because I'm sure this is very helpful for her to bring back to the staff and working with the families that she works with. You are able to unmute, Maureen. I think I did it correctly, unless I need Michelle to, unless you want to write something in the chat, Maureen. I see she's writing thank you. You're welcome, Maureen. Thank you. Any of our other panelists want to speak before Dr. Saraceno does our closing? Okay, well, please make sure you sign the reflection and give your feedback regardless if you are a panelist or an attendee. I think that, it's important that we all are giving both Sarah and myself and my team the feedback so we can continue to plan for next year. I know that Sarah has graciously spoke to us about rejoining next year. I think what you have done just across the board has been tremendous. But I will tell you, the way you've worked with the staff in the more recent days at the middle school, the feedback has really been tremendous. So thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Pedrosa, and thank you, Sarah Stevenson, for all of your strategies. Once again, I think what we all find so important is that these strategies can be used in school and at home. And we encourage, as Sarah said, we encourage you to use these strategies with your children at home. And without that, that's about it for us. We thank you all for attending, and we hope that you find the strategies useful with your children.